the next thing that kind of affected me that I mentioned a little bit earlier was I had this I didn't know what was going on, but I managed to lose like 50 pounds in a matter of 2 years from the end of my like high school years to like 2013. And like people were like, "Oh wow, look at you losing weight. Like you're doing great." Like I wasn't even exercising or nothing. I like really I was still eating the same things basically. And maybe at one point I was trying to drink differently, like try not to drink as much Coke. But besides that, I was like losing weight like really fast. And I was thinking, oh, this is awesome. Like I'm losing weight and I'm not even trying. And then here I come down to like 160, which I started looking like really thin, like a little too thin for my body type. And um and it started kind of getting a little bit scary at one point because it was getting to the point to where I was in very bad pain, like down here in my like tailbone area. And it was getting to where I couldn't even walk. Like I was like having a really hard time walking without it being painful. Or like I would have to lay a certain way without it like being like sharp pain down there. So that became a big concern because like my family started like was really scared that I possibly had like cancer because I was losing weight so fast and I was in like excruciating pain. So I ended up going to a doctor that following day after I was having that terrible, terrible pain at work. And then I got referred from that like family practice doctor to like a specialist. And so I went there and then I ended up finding out that I don't know if this is what affected it, but I'm gonna say that this thing affected it. But anyways, they found a pill and needle cyst right on my tailbone. And they had to surgically remove it. I had to be awake the whole time during that process, so it was not fun. It was very painful, them having to remove it. And then there was this whole idea. I'm kind of going a little bit TMI, but there was this after the surgically removing it, then they had to like my I had to heal from the inside out, so they had to like pack. I think it's called packing basically up they had to do like an incision on my tailbone and like pack it in to where I guess like it would heal from the inside out. And I had to do that for like a week where and it was very painful. It was and I know that's very gruesome, but it was literally blood, sweat, and tears that whole week. It was so painful and I was like and crying a lot. And but anyways, I got better from that in 2013, so that was good because I was somehow after that got resolved, I started gaining weight again, and and then 2 years later in 2015, I started like having kind of like the same problem where I started having blood down there as well, to where a little too much blood, and it was getting pretty concerning because I was thinking, oh no, like what is this problem now? Like I just had the cyst like a couple years ago that was affecting me, and now here's this problem, which I mean years before, like the problems actually kind of started in 2011, but like it got drastically worse in 2015. So that's where I realized I need to go back to the doctor. And so I went to the doctor. Then they referred me to a different doctor. I had a colonoscopy as well, which that prep is the worst thing ever. I cannot stand that prep. So
Yeah, I've been there, done that. Like I don't even know how many times at this point.
yeah, that's the worst part about it all. That when somebody told me like that's the worst part, the colonoscopy is the easy part because I was nervous about being like put under because I've never been like I guess anesthesia or anything like that. But they're like that you shouldn't even be worried about that. You need to worry about the prep. It's like and once I went through that prep, I was like, yep, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So I ended up having a colonoscopy and they didn't see no like polyps or anything like that. But I feel like I think they must have seen something because they sent me to another specialist, a colorectal like doctor.
Hmm.
And so I went to one of those and and they ended up finding an ulcer. So I ended up getting that surgically removed here a couple of months after the colonoscopy, and I think that kind of made things a little bit better. I mean, every now and then it's still a problem, but it's not to where it's a major problem. But that definitely had a big effect on me for sure. They didn't really say, I mean, I don't know. They said there was many things that could have caused that ulcer, but they couldn't really pinpoint something exactly. But I mean, I know they said at one point like stress, but it's like I don't know, like if I was like really stressed enough to where and to where ulcers were, showing up. But anyways, yeah, I had that removed. So that was like my main like problems as far as like health wise. I mean, other than that, just simple stuff like I mean, I had the flu once. I mean, I had COVID last year, which was minor, thankfully. The stomach bug is never fun, but besides that, those were like my main problems.
Mm. I mean, uh, yeah, you mentioned asthma. That was definitely, I mean, because I have asthma as well, and it's just like it's so background for me at this point. I think honestly, because something I found interesting about asthma in particular is that it's not hereditary. It is completely and entirely due to your environment. So, a lot of people living in smog-filled cities, for example, are a lot more prone to it, or in drier climates especially. I was born in both of those, being in Dallas, Texas. We had just pollution everywhere. We even had ozone days. I remember there was one day the sky literally turned red. It was just so much different than Alabama. Um, and while I love Texas and I miss my home dearly, um, that was the day to day. We would drive into downtown Dallas to get to school, and it was extremely polluted and dirty. And I have no doubt that compared with the dry weather, contributed to our breathing issues to the point where, at least once a year, I would usually come down with bronchitis, sometimes develop into walking pneumonia, and it was just kind of expected. There wasn't really anything we could do about it. When I moved to Alabama, things being just so much greener and there being more moisture in the air, like I don't typically have those problems quite as severely. Um, there was COVID, which wasn't really much about coughing for me. Like it wasn't really as much of the actual breathing symptoms. It was just more like a bad flu to me. Um, I got really bad chills, had fever. Um, I didn't have, let's see, I had weird dreams, I remember with COVID. Um, I did lose taste, and smell, but like I don't feel like that's any different from like any other flu-like thing. I mean, like you're just congested, so like you don't really notice that you've lost anything until like I tried drinking a smoothie when I had COVID, and I was like, oh, this is just so gross and slimy. I hate it, nasty. Um, and you sleep a lot. That's about it. Like I really slept a lot. Like I mean, but no, like I had actually had a really bad case of walking pneumonia uh back in late February, early March of 2020, right when things were kind of starting to hit the fan. Um, and I was like coughing my lungs out because I had two different doctors tell me uh, that this um, lung infection I had was viral and would go away on its own. When in reality, it didn't, and it was bacterial and needed antibiotics. But by that time, I let it go on for like 2.5 weeks, and I was coughing up blood, and things weren't going good. And went through a whole round of antibiotics, and it still wasn't enough. So I had to go through a second round of antibiotics, an even longer one, and it was really difficult. And this was after I'd already, flown because like at that time of year I was going home to visit my family in Texas for like a week, and so I really didn't have time to sit around and be on antibiotics and be recovering. I needed to be on the go. Um, So I got like a steroid shot to try to just avert it, and that didn't really help all the way. So I got really sick, and it was like, I guess like the steroids will like kind of nullify your immune system and stop you from doing anything. And so I came back. The first day I got back to my apartment that year back in Alabama was I got 103 to temperature. So it's like crap.
Ooh.
I was like, this is not good. And I thought this whole time, I'm thinking, with how everything had been hyped up on the news about, this lung disease that people are getting with COVID-19. I'm like, oh crap, this is what it is. And then it's not. When I actually did get it, it was nowhere near as, not saying people don't get severe cases, but I mean, having had it and surviving it before, the whole vaccine rollout or whatever, I mean, it's just like, okay, I've literally survived worse. Um, of course, I have that ability to say that because I'm not in one of the primary affected demographics of the elderly. It's mostly the elderly that suffer these things. But that being said, I mean, apart from, but yeah, I mean, so breathing and eating, two most important vital human functions, have always kind of been a difficulty for me. But at least the breathing got better when I moved to Alabama. It's not nearly as much of an issue as it was. I do still have a rescue inhaler, and I still do take that, whenever I'm like working out, typically. Um, Not so much with weights, more just when I'm elevating my heart rate, cardio, whatever. But I can also get away with sometimes not needing it. But there have been times, like especially when I was getting started, like in the like whenever it happened sporadically. Like there were a few times where like I would take my inhaler and it wouldn't be enough, and I would start hyperventilating while I was working out, or I would push myself too hard, um, and my heart rate wouldn't come down fast enough, um, and I would just get really dizzy and kind of like feel like I need to fall out a little bit. But that's, but yeah, asthma, that was definitely something I struggled with as well. So I relate there. And I did, I think it was because, between that and just being sick with, or just having a hard time eating as a child, I actually used to be underweight, believe it or not, whenever I was all the way up until I want to say second grade. In first grade, actually, I was the only kid who was still sitting in a car seat because I was very underweight. Um, and I think part of that was because again, I couldn't keep any food down. A lot of times I was ending up sick. I was ending up going to the hospital. I was just very sick. And because of that, I think I was very picky. I was a very picky eater as a child. I wouldn't eat like any meat. Uh, I wouldn't eat a lot of various kinds of food. Like the only thing I would eat would be like um, spaghetti, I think was one of them, which still wasn't good for me. So I don't know why that got a pass. But but yeah, so I mean like I was really underweight, and then second grade I finally coerced myself to try eating hamburger for the first time, and as I guess I started introducing more of that protein, like I instantly started gaining weight, and was great until it wasn't. but but yeah, so weight, digestion, breathing. Um and you said so that ulcer thing that happened, that was like on your lower back?
So I did have a cyst that was on my tailbone, but then I
Right, right.
also had an ulcer a couple years later. It was an anal ulcer.
Oh, yeah, yeah, wow. Um so yeah, because I guess like I mean, I don't even know like what exactly do you define as what even is an ulcer, you know? I mean like I know what a hernia is. Like you're just like moving tissue around in a way that's not supposed to move. Like is an ulcer, is it similar to that, I guess? It's just like a lesion.
Yeah, I think that's typically basically what it is. It's just in a different area for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, because like I know that like typically when I hear people talk about ulcers, they usually talk about getting them like in their stomach or something a little bit further up the GI tract. But I guess you can get them anywhere. I mean, especially if you're really stressed out. I don't know if I mean you said you didn't know about being that stressed out at that time or not. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's possible that I could have been because around that time I was still in college, and I'm sure I had, especially during that time when I was having it removed, I was around, I think I was still at Jeff State Community College, but I was still, I guess, just overwhelmed probably with classes. So it could have possibly been stress.